Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey, at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of September 11, 2012, at the Roosevelt Intermediate School, Cafeteria Meeting Room, 301 Clark Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the Board and to transact any other business to come properly before the Board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield Board of Education on Friday, September 7, 2012, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, the Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Could we get a roll call, please?
Richard Messessic.
Here.
David Finn.
Here.
Ann Carey.
Here.
Ann Clancy.
Here.
Mark Friedman.
Here.
Roseanne Kerstead.
Here.
Jane Leeds.
Here.
Gretchen Olid.
Here.
And Jill Slater.
Here. All right, with that, I'm sure you noticed the new face at the table. With us at the table tonight is our new Business Administrator and Board Secretary, Dana Sullivan. Welcome. Ms. Sullivan brings to Westfield 15 years of experience as a school business administrator, 4 years as an assistant BA, and 5 years with a public accounting firm. She is a CPA, a licensed public school accountant, and a registered school business administrator. Most recently, she served as the business administrator in the Montclair Public Schools, which has an enrollment very similar to that of us here in Westfield. We are extremely pleased to have you join us in Westfield, Dana, and we welcome you to our town and your first board meeting. Mr. Finn, could you lead us in the flag?
Please stand. Before we salute our flag tonight, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for all those who died on September 11th, 2001, and that we keep their families and loved ones in our thoughts and prayers. Please join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Announcements. Mitch, anything down your end?
Yes, the back-to-school nights. The Westfield Public Schools have scheduled back-to-school nights for parents and guardians of children in each of our 10 schools. Please check individual school websites for any changes to the schedule, which begin September 12th and end October 4th. These are always very well attended and anticipated events in our district for parents, faculty, and school principals. Thanks.
Thank you. Jane?
Nope.
Jenny?
I do. This comes to us from Westfield High School. A total of 97% of the 456 Westfield High School graduates of 2012 are pursuing a higher education this fall. That was 97%. According to a report released by the Office of Counseling Services, 87.5% of students are attending four-year colleges and universities. 6.5% are attending two-year colleges, and 1.3% entered vocational business and other post-high school institutions. The remainder have accepted employment, pursued a military career, or had future plans that were undecided at the time of graduation. The class of 2012 is attending 166 colleges and universities from A to almost Z. American University in Washington, D.C. to William and Mary College in Williamsburg, Virginia. And in schools that are in their home state of New Jersey to as far away as Canada, Scotland, and Switzerland. A complete list of plans for these graduates is on the Counseling Department's website at www.westfieldnjk12.org/Westfield High. Congratulations to all of our 2012 graduates.
Thank you. Gretchen, anything down here? Mark?
Yep. This is about In-Service Day. All of our teachers and support staff attended an in-service on August 30th to further prepare them for the new school year. Technology sessions were designed to support the implementation of the recent investment in district-wide wireless capacity, as well as the many iPad and laptop carts that were deployed over the summer. A new paperless endeavor created to streamline individualized educational programs for special education students was introduced to Child Study Team staff. In-class support teachers worked on team teaching strategies. Our health services staff became recertified in CPR and learned more about the district's data software program. Social studies staff, as well as the fine and performing arts teachers, explored 2012 common assessments. New curricular revisions in grades K to 5 language arts, as well as in intermediate math and science, were supported by hands-on workshops that employed research-based approaches and new resources. It was certainly a productive day and a great kickoff to the new school year.
Public invited to a bond meeting at 9:30 a.m. Wednesday, September 19th. Want to learn more about the September 24th bond referendum? Westfield residents are invited to Roosevelt Intermediate School's auditorium at 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday, September 19th. Dr. Margaret Dolan, Board of Education members, and architects and lighting professionals will be on hand to explain the proposals for new roofs throughout the district and a lighted turf field at Westfield High School. This will be the last public meeting on the bond. The bond referendum vote is Monday, September 24th. Polls will be open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Information is always available at www.westfieldnjk12.org/bond2012. And I'd also like to let you know about some calendar changes. The district calendar for September has been updated and is posted at www.westfieldnjk12.org under Important Messages. The printed calendar mailed to families in the district did not list the September 19th meeting. Instead, it incorrectly listed the meeting date as September 24th, which is the actual date of the bond vote itself. So remember, the bond vote is Monday, September 24th, and polls are open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Thank you. Yeah?
No, nothing.
Dave? Okay. All right. The Westfield Public Schools will be closed in observance of Rosh Hashanah on Monday and Tuesday, September 17th and 18th. In addition, the next Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 2nd. The meeting will be held in the boardroom at 302 Elm Street. With that, I'll recognize members of the public for agenda items only. I would note that we will have a discussion on the bond and the roofs and the turf field, so it may make sense for you to hold your questions on those topics until after the presentation. With that, is there anyone who would like to be recognized?
We'll also be taking questions after the technology presentation.
With respect to the technology presentation?
Yes.
Sure, we could. Yes, absolutely. Okay, seeing no one come to the podium, then I would ask that we move into the superintendent's report.
The first superintendent report this evening is a report I'm very pleased to make, and that report is about the actual implementation of the technology initiative. Now, those who follow board meetings either by watching on our local cable stations or watching our videos on our website or reading our synopsis, however you do hear about it, you know that we spent a great deal of time last year working on this technology initiative. We had the help of a number of people at this table. We had the Ad Hoc Technology Committee who worked weekly to make sure that we were thinking through what we should be doing in the realm of technology in all of our schools. The Ad Hoc Technology Committee of the Board also received suggestions by members of the community who have backgrounds in technology and who volunteered to serve on a community committee to help us out, as well as other suggestions that were given by members of the community, even if people were not on the committee. All of that work has been worth it. We were very busy this summer. We're very pleased with what we've been able to do and what is now in the hands of our children and in the hands of our teachers as they work with our children. Tonight, I'm going to ask our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Mr. Paul Panero, to give us an update on the implementation of the technology initiative.
I'll need that. Good evening, everybody. Please forgive my back. As Dr. Dolan mentioned, we became very involved and excited last year in the vision for implementing a technology initiative that would assure that our students were learning in a 21st century classroom environment. So needs were determined, best practices were explored, funding was determined, and our goal was to begin in 2012, 2013 with a substantially enhanced technological infrastructure. Tonight I'll update you on our progress since the last time we were able to talk to you about this initiative. To prepare our staff, we committed significant professional development resources to technology training. It began on August 30th during our in-service. We had instructional technology sessions presented by experts in the field, and we also supported these efforts with online professional development. On August 30th, we had 48 instructional technology sessions available to our staff, and over 325 staff members were trained in technology topics on that one day. This is just a sampling of some of the topics that we explored: Google Apps, 21st Century Classroom, professional learning networks, internet resources and data collecting technologies and science, iPads for education. There were many others. These sessions were run by highly experienced instructional technology specialists, such as Karen Warner and Associates. Our presenter biographies appear on our in-service website, and in a moment I'll show you how we also populated folders for each presenter with resources that our teachers could call upon, not just in advance of our in-service day, but during the day itself and indefinitely afterwards throughout the school year. The training on August 30th is not a one-shot deal. It will be ongoing and sustained in a number of ways. Online resources will be available 24/7. This is one example of a website that's linked to our in-service website. This is from Karen Warner and Associates, and those were the 3 modules that every single teacher at Westfield High School participated in. The Google Apps Suite was one, 21st Century Classroom, which is connected to the standards for 21st century learning. That's also part of it's included in our mission statement, those standards. I'm sorry, in the strategic plan. And also professional learning networks were explored. Professional learning networks are tools for educators so that they can share thoughts and collaborate online at their convenience 24/7. This is the in-service website that I mentioned that stays up for our staff. They can go to this website, as I said, throughout the school year. They can access our presenter resources as well, and we'll continue to populate information on this site throughout the year for our staff. This is a sample of the folders that have been, where we included all the resources so teachers can remember who they worked with that day and still go back and work with either the handouts or the web links, all kinds of resources. Okay. In addition to easily accessible online resources, we've provided additional supports. These include 2 master tech teachers. Our master technology teachers will provide new instructional technology training, and they will coach teachers to enhance instruction through latest technologies. We'll have one for elementary support, K through 5, and then we'll have one master technology teacher to work with the secondary schools, intermediate and Westfield High School. They've begun this process by surveying all the staff in the district to find out where their proficiencies lie in the area of instructional technologies, as well as things that they use frequently and things that they would like to learn more about. So this is just an example of one of the 2 surveys that were sent out to all the staff. And again, by going over these surveys together, we'll be able to determine what best way to help our staff learn throughout the school year. And here are, there are a number of ways that the master technology teachers will be able to help. They're embedded in the school day, so they provide daily support and professional development. They can work with teachers before school, during prep periods, after school, in-class coaching. They can help design lessons. And we have to remember there are many very talented teachers who have a proclivity for technology and instructional, the infusion of technology into their instruction. So they'll also work closely with those folks who are typically referred to as early adopters, so that they can together leverage their experience among staff throughout the district. This is just another example of how our master technology teachers can help. This is one of our master technology teachers' blogs that she just launched really last week. And what she's already done since launching it last week is provided the free app of the day for the Apple iPad carts. She's already commented on different activities you can use in the elementary classroom, since this is an example of the elementary blog. And she's got links, password-protected links, so that teachers can quickly reference all of the different online resources we have that we have subscriptions to, data streaming, video streaming. All of those resources are in one place for the elementary teachers to refer to. So this is a really exciting enhancement for our teachers to be able to go to sort of like one-stop shopping. They can get advice. And also the master technology teacher will share the work that she's doing in the classroom, so that maybe teachers who didn't work with her yet can learn from what others have been able to do. Okay. Now, a lot needed to be put in place in order to provide the training for August 30th and beyond. The infrastructure was greatly enhanced and improved. This is just an example of all of the hardware this is the hardware that was deployed during the summer, but we're not through yet deploying all of the hardware, but this gives you a sense of it. There are 360 iPads that were deployed over the summer, 156 Ultrabooks, laptops for the most part, desktop computers, 97, which includes computer labs, multi-seat computers in the elementary schools, that's 5 computers in each elementary classroom. The infrastructure, the faster internet connection, we've gone from a speed of 50 megabits to 100 megabits. And also the new wireless network provides instant access anywhere in the district. And that's an exciting enhancement as well. We also supported technology through staffing. We now have an information processing manager who will be responsible for New Jersey Smart student and staff data uploading. New Jersey Smart is a Department of Education database of required information that we must provide on all staff and all students. And as you can imagine, it requires a lot of detail and uploading, and then conflict resolution to make sure, conflict corrections to make sure that the data it jibes perfectly well with the state, and also with our own internal databases. So that person will be very busy coordinating and syncing really the data between our school district and the State Department. Also, the information processing manager will be able to assist the administration and teachers in analyzing student data. It could be test results and something involving Genesis, which is our in-district database, and report cards are kept on there. So, you know, information is power, so we need to make sure we leverage that as much as possible, and the information processing manager will help us do that. Okay, an additional district computer technician will also help. The district computer technician we've added will be required to meet the increasing demand of infusion of technology with all the numbers I showed you on the prior page of technology hardware that's been deployed. The district computer technicians will have a lot more work to do. Also, it'll help meet the demands of the teachers who use technology and might need regular maintenance in their classrooms. So that's it in a nutshell, and certainly we can talk a little bit, but we've talked a lot about the resources and training, but all of this is really about the students and our mission for them. So I think you'll find that all of this effort is aligned nicely with our Westfield Public Schools Strategic Plan 2010-15, We will provide curriculum, instruction, and programs to prepare our students with 21st century skills to succeed in a global society. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank Paul. I know how much hard work has gone in to get us to this point. I appreciate everything that you're doing, and your staff as well. And I had the opportunity to attend the in-service day and some of the sessions, and I was just incredibly impressed by the talent that was brought in for in-service day and the teaching that went on, and I guess most importantly by speaking with the number of the teachers to see just how excited they were about having this in the classroom and really clearly wanted to learn more, and that was a very exciting day, and I think a great kickoff for the entire program. And I also was over at the school earlier today and saw some of the actual hardware, which may not sound very exciting, but the iPad carts, and I'm someone that's kind of geeky about all this stuff, but I was just blown away by the actual iPad carts and how they work, and I think it's really exciting. And obviously, I want to thank Brian's not here tonight, but Brian Walker for the research that he's done in getting the right, really the right tools, along with the right folks that you're involved with to teach it. And I'm just really, really excited, and I think this is going to be a terrific, terrific learning experience and a great school year for our kids. So thank you, Paul, for all your hard work.
I'd like to add to, on that note, with regard to the iPad carts, more specifically, it didn't necessarily refer to it in the presentation, but just an example as the master technology teachers are currently working departmentally with iPad apps. So they are now collecting and fine-tuning and preparing departmental workshops just for iPad applications, apps. And also, on the day of in-service, there were departments running their own articulations about what apps work well for them. So it really is picking up a great momentum, and there's just so much that our various staff, from Brian deploying it all, and then the master technology teachers already getting involved, our instructional technology people who are experts in each building, they've been keeping it rolling for a few years now, and we think that this will, they'll be able to enhance this as well.
And it's such a change, constant change, and having the ability with these iPad carts of loading 20 or 30 or 40 apps on every single iPad simultaneously may not sound like much, but that's very exciting, and I think gets them in the classroom as the changes continue to happen. So, thanks again.
I'm amazed at where we've come in a year. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of conversation at the ad hoc technology table. And thank goodness that we had some extra state aid money and budget money. And technology has really moved to the forefront as a strategic opportunity here and as a commitment. And it's made us very proud, I believe. I think the kids are going to benefit tremendously. And the teachers I know are so far ahead and so excited about using the equipment that they have and the opportunity. Thank you very much. Is it possible to put this presentation on our website?
Yes, we can do that. I'll have it put up tomorrow.
Thank you. I'd love to be able to share it with the public.
Sure.
Anyone from the public on the technology presentation?
Gary McCready, 39 Mohican. I think the last time I attended a board meeting, it was like sort of the plans for this deployment of technology, and plans sounded great, and the implementation sounds even more wonderful. So, especially 360 iPads, those will hopefully be able to circulate. I know my daughter is already in a class that'll be using them, so hope to hear some good reports back from her. But as somebody who works in the information technology area, I'm really glad that you have the backing support, the data processing manager, computer technicians, master teachers, all those. It's like, 'cause I know that a lot of times we deploy programs or new initiatives, they just don't go anywhere unless you really have the support from them. So I really, commend the board for not only providing the hardware, but also the people behind the hardware that'll keep it running. And along those lines, I hope that, again, even though it sounds like this was in part funded with the additional state aid, is that you can start building into the budget whatever the lifetime of the iPads or other technologies are, that you can still keep the budget line going so that when these need replacing, they do get replaced. But one of the other things that I saw up there, but I didn't really see, is that I just recently got a Kindle myself. I'd been waiting so long because I couldn't really figure out which one to get. And I'm just wondering if there are any, what I call like the lower tech options like this that you might be deploying, because one of the things that I was just looking on some of the books you can get, and a lot of them are free or in the public domain, but even with ones you pay for, you can divide the price up to by as many as 6 different devices. So where you might have typically have paid maybe even $10 for a Kindle book, now that could go down as less than $2 on up to 6 shared devices. So, and if we can get kids excited about reading, maybe if they're not so drawn to the hardcover, something on a device like this might, even if we start them in the elementary grades, it might be something to consider, not only to save money, but also hopefully to get kids excited. And just to quickly mention a few ideas that maybe, like these things, when I was on the board, couldn't really come to fruition, but if we're looking at perhaps in the future online classes, especially with the use of forums, just maybe within Westfield or even sharing in a consortium with other schools, I'd love to see that happen, because that's really the way that corporate education is going, and the earlier kids get used to actually learning online instead of just simply interacting, in my opinion, the better it is. Also, understand that with wireless, there might be now, because my daughter was told that she might be using her own iDevice or Android device in the classroom, and I know there's probably currently a policy that might restrict the use of it, and also if you're asking kids to use their devices, it does involve some risk and perhaps use of data if it's not configured to use the wireless. So there probably has to be some work there to make sure that parents don't see a big data bill where their kids are just telling them, well, my teacher told me to do it. So probably want to avoid that by communications and such. And last thing I mentioned is that I took a quick look at both my son, who's a freshman, and my daughter, who's a junior's teacher websites. Half of them looked very impressive, and the other half looked well dated. And again, if you have a chance to somehow specify or encourage or maybe put in contract language, or what I would call like a electronic update policy, so that we've got so many great teachers, and to just simply share either what the curriculum will be or what their plans for it or other information in a publicly viewable area, or maybe just how they're using the technology that the board is paying for, that would be very useful. I looked in all of the on the websites, but I didn't really see, I know it's early, but it'd be great to see how they're using technology just by going to the teacher's own website. So that'd be sort of a great example of, where the money is going that anyone could take a look at. But thanks.
Thank you.
I would just add that most of the things that you mentioned, great ideas, Gary, and most of them, I think, are things that were all under discussion in our ad hoc technology, pretty much everyone you mentioned, and they're really, really good ideas. Thanks.
Anyone else from the public?
Amy Chin, 459 Whittier Avenue. I just want to kind of tag off of what Mr. McCready was saying, and pretty much every person that's in the high school has one of these. It's a phone, and it's an Android phone or an iPhone. They all know how to download the apps. They probably know the technology better than all of the teachers. Let's see if we can probably incorporate the students in some of the learning process for the teachers, because I must admit, when I got my new cell phone over the summer, my son was able to click, 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 and here you go, you have everything you need. So I'd like to see if there's some way that we can incorporate the students in the learning for the teachers, because I think this process will go a lot faster if it's also student-driven and not just teacher-driven. And these iPhones and these Droids, they all can have the Kindle app, they all have all that stuff that they can have. Every book that they have, half the stuff that my son is reading is like To Kill a Mockingbird. You can download that for free. You don't have to have this. My son was given an agenda. Listen, they don't need agendas anymore. They have to learn that in the 21st century, I don't use an agenda anymore. Everything goes on here. We all use this stuff all the time. So it's time to realize that the kids know even more about this than probably the teachers and are using it very actively. They're all very up on all this stuff, and to think that they'll be excited, they'll be only excited if the teachers really click and really start using this stuff in the classroom all the time. He's sitting there writing out his assignments. Every one of these has a phone. Take a picture. Takes 2 seconds. Let the kids use the technology that they all have, and probably every student in this district probably has at least $1,000 worth of their own technology sitting in their house that the parents are saying, why do you only use this for games? All of that stuff can be used for educational purposes. We just need to let them use it. So I like what we're doing so far, but I think we have to expand our thoughts and expand the process even more and incorporate some of the stuff that these kids use every single day into the stuff. They have to realize, you know what? Mom and Dad don't have to do this. They can have access to their athletic schedule. It's right here on their phone. They can have access to the cafeteria menu. It's right here on their phone. All of the kids have, I would say, maybe not all, but a good 95% of the kids now have data plans, and they stream all this stuff all the time. So it's time to really move. Yes, I think that it's great that we now have 360 iPads, but I bet you in our district we probably have 5,000 iPads. There's very few kids that don't have either a notebook, a laptop, or an iPad at home. So it's time to take advantage of their own resources in the district. I agree we do need to spend money on technology, especially the upgrading of the Wi-Fi, but almost every one of the kids in this district, I would say, have the technology that you're talking about now in their home. So let them start using it. Let's change some of our things that we've gotten written into what they can't do and say, listen, you know what? Yes, maybe we were thinking this could only be used for texting and for phone conversations, but just like the kids take out their books and the teachers say, okay, now put away your book because you're going to be using it, let them take out their cell phone, use it for what it needs to be used for in the classroom, and then they put it away when they're done using it. It's one of those things that these kids are going to be using this, they're going to go off to jobs. I mean, in my job, who uses, I mean, yes, you sometimes take notes, but everything goes into to here. They have iPads, everything is done on computers. So it's time to get them even more excited by really letting them use the technology that every one of these kids possess in the schools themselves. Not just the teachers saying, all right, we got some training and now we can incorporate some of these apps. I would say probably every kid probably has about 30 apps on their phone or on their iPad that they're already using all the time. So, and a lot of that can be used for education. So I want to commend the board for forward thinking, but I think we need to look a little bit forward and say, listen, there's lots of stuff out there that the kids already use. Let's get them excited with the stuff that they currently have. We don't have to buy this stuff for it. They already have it, so let them use it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We just add one thing to that. That's actually something we've talked about quite a bit, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the power that a lot of people have in their phones, truly amazing and life-changing. Or not life-changing, but change is part of life. One of the things we're struggling with, and will continue to, because I agree with you, things are changing going forward. You're right, not everybody has that. And so how do you deal with the equity? I'm sure there are answers for that, but it's not everybody. Not every child has a phone, depending on age levels. Not every child has, even if they have a phone so they can communicate with their parents, they may not have an iPhone or a Droid. Do a lot of them? Yes. Do all of them? No. So that's one of the things we're grappling with, because we have to make sure that we're being equitable for all students. Will we come up with answers? I think we will, but that's one of the things that we're in the midst of.
Anyone else from the public on technology? Yes.
Hi, Maureen Keough, 419 East Dudley Avenue, you kind of just made my point for me. If 95% of the kids have this technology, that's great. I think the number's probably lower. I don't have a laptop in my house. I don't have an Android phone. I don't have an iPad. And we have one computer everybody uses, which thankfully works most of the time. But I think you should be cognizant of the fact that not everyone has access to the technology all the time. When I had 3 kids that were in school at the same time, having to do all the homework assignments on the computer when I had 3 kids competing for use of one was a little difficult. So having exposure to this technology is great, assuming they have it and can bring it and always have the latest technology and have it available for that one kid to bring to school is a bit of a reach, and I would just ask that everyone be cognizant of that. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Follow up from the board? Thank you very much.
And the second presentation tonight needs a bit of an introduction, I think. I'm certainly going to talk about the bond referendum, which is scheduled for Monday, September 24th. But I'm going to take a step back just for a moment. So at the last board meeting, my presentation was all about the preparation for the opening of school, which took place last week. And in that, there are a lot of different factors that go into the opening of a school district. So we talked about the enrollment and talked about the steady increase of enrollment over the past 20 years in Westfield. Talked about the staff, the fact that we had our staff in place for the opening of the school year and the work that went involved in that. Talked about the preparation of the staff. For example, we had over 100 elementary teachers who were trained in the summer over our new literacy curriculum. We talked about all the summer maintenance work that was done. We had over 30 maintenance projects that were completed, and it touched every single school in the district. Talked about summer programs for students, talked about this technology initiative that we just talked about, talked about other curricular changes, how we now have, starting this year, we have a robotics class at the intermediate level, and we've introduced Chinese at the high school, and some of the other curriculum that were revised because of the new standards at the federal level. And we talked about the successful performance of our students in academics, in fine arts, and in athletics. And all of that, all what I went over at the last meeting about the opening of school and work that had been accomplished, all of that is accomplished within our operating budget. But there are some other factors and things we've been looking at in our district and that this Board of Education and previous boards of education have struggled with for years and can't be funded through the operating budget. And those are the items that are now in a bond referendum that is being presented to voters. And the 2 topics that are part of that bond referendum are replacement of roofs and field usage. And these 2 projects are the ones that are being presented to the voters. Now, both of these projects support the more than 6,300 students who are enrolled in our schools today. And they will also support the thousands of students who are going to follow these students in the decades to come. And years of conversations, and I can vouch for that, years of conversations have taken place on both of these projects. And in fact, as I try to prepare this, it's a little bit daunting to try to summarize it in a short PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to ask people at this table, every board member at this table has had at least months, if not many years, of sitting at meetings, of listening to people, of reading reports, of asking questions. So as I go through the presentation, if I forget things at the end, please make sure that you do add them, because I'm sure I can't cover everything. So this bond looks to replace the roofs over the heads of our students and also to install a multi-purpose field beneath their feet that will expand opportunities for high school physical education and also competitive athletics. In Westfield, we have 10 schools. And the average age of these schools is 73 years old. We're a mature community. The majority of our roofs have lasted longer than their intended lifespan. We spend money every year from our operating budget, fixing, patching, repairing sections of roofs, and the roofs have been maintained so that they have lasted longer than expected, but they are still old. In the past decades, boards of education could keep a surplus for projects such as roofs. Now that there is a 2% cap on surplus for all school districts in New Jersey, that's enough to cover unexpected operating costs, but it's not enough for large capital projects such as full replacement of roofs. Now, we've known that our roofs are getting old. As a matter of fact, the members of this community who sat on the Strategic Planning Committee in 2010 talked about and came up with a goal as part of the strategic plan that talked about identifying alternative sources of revenue to make improvements to our old buildings. And as part of the work on the strategic plan, the board and I tried for 2 years to find companies who would install solar panels on our roofs and repair our roofs as part of the process. We went out to bid twice, but were not successful. The federal and state incentives for solar energy had expired, and the companies could not make enough money on our projects. But we did gain some information about our roofs during the work on our solar proposal. We learned that we require a fully integrated approach to the roofs across the district. Our proposal for the roof replacements includes replacing roofs at each school building, and the work would be done in summer of 2013. In total, of all of our roof surfaces across the district, 77% of the roof surfaces would be replaced. As part of the proposal also, upgraded insulation will be installed so that we'll have increased energy conservation and our roofs will also be solar ready. So this part of the bond focused on facility needs, but to understand the next part of the bond, I think we have to take a quick look at enrollment. These figures compare the numbers from 2000 to 2010. From 2000 to 2010, the total population in the town of Westfield increased 3.2%. But the enrollment in the Westfield Public Schools increased more than 17%. And when you look at the number of student athletes, the number of student athletes increased 31%. Another number not on the screen at all, but one that I find interesting, we have over 1,500 students last year were involved in athletics at our high school. And looking at our recent graduates, 123 of our recent graduates this year are competing at the collegiate level, and 4 are playing professionally. Certainly not all of our athletes do that, but 123 students this year from our Westfield High School are competing at the collegiate level. And many of those graduates have had the opportunity to practice or play on Kaler Field. The voters in Westfield approved a bond, and the turf field at Kaler was opened in 2006. And this turf field has served our students well. It's in excellent condition, and hundreds of our students will be practicing and playing on this field through every season this year and going forward. Because of its location, we're also lucky that students from Edison School can also use it sometimes for their physical education classes. But all of our over 1,500 student athletes cannot play on this field. There are, first of all, let me state the obvious, the swim team would not use the field. There are a number of teams who are not going to use the field, but all of those student athletes who would use a playing field such as that. All of our student athletes cannot play on the field. There are too many practices and too many games. And because of the numbers of our student athletes, in just about every sport, we not only have varsity, we have junior varsity, and we have freshman teams. Sidfay and Houlihan are certainly turf fields that are installed by the town, and while they certainly provide a great deal of access for students in leagues and a number of sports, they are not regulation fields for interscholastic high school athletics. So the proposed Westfield High School field. The proposed field is a multi-purpose field. It will be used by the physical education classes at the high school during the day and will allow multiple teams to practice and play at the varsity, junior varsity, and freshman levels. The location of the multi-purpose field at the high school will also allow Westfield High School students to easily attend games of their classmates. The Westfield High School field does provide physical education for the 1,865 students in Westfield High School, and also provides regulation-sized fields for interscholastic play, for soccer, both girls and boys, for field hockey, for lacrosse, both boys and girls, and also for softball. The proposal also includes lights for the Westfield High School field. Throughout our town, our schools are located in the middle of residential areas, and it is certainly a bit of a challenge to have a large high school in the middle of a residential area. So we've worked hard with lighting consultants to make sure that we light our field, not our neighbors' homes. And in fact, a computerized system will govern which lights will be on for which specific sports on any given night. On the slide that is now up, it describes how light is measured and gives examples of what the lights are going to be like surrounding the field. So light is measured in foot candles. And to give an example, moonlight has an average foot candle measurement of 0.1, whereas a street light generally ranges from 3.0 to 4.9 foot candles. Now, we had the consultant check all of the residential areas around the field, and the range was generally 0.0 to 0.2. There was one value of 0.6. Now, again, that is on the residential areas directly around the high school. On the field, the foot candles are high enough so that the students are going to be able to play, but it is very targeted. It is a computerized system of lighting, and there are targeted lights for specific sports. All the lights are not on all the time. They're on differently for a game like softball, where you hope that the ball is going to be high in the air, so you want the light to be able to show that, whereas another sport needs a different type of lighting. And only the lights for the activities that are on the field will be turned on. And the lights will only be on during practices or games. They will not be on automatically every night. There is the ability for remote access by district employees who will be given the responsibility to make sure they're only on when there are actually practices and games, and that the correct lights are on. If only one part of the field is being used, that's where the lights should be on. The board has heard concerns from neighbors and gotten some suggestions, and games and has recommended and decided that games and practices will end at 9 p.m. and no lights will be on Sunday evenings. There are some other responses to community concerns that have been raised. We've already started the process of coordinating with the town and the Armory so that when there are multiple events, that we do not schedule them at the same time. There are a number of times where the Armory will have a weekend event, for example, and they use the Westfield High School parking lot for some of the people who attend that. And so we've already started the conversation to find out where the dates are, where there will be overlaps, and we'll do that going forward. There was some misconception early on. We're only going to have one regulation game at a given time, so again, there will not be too large of a crowd. And we do not anticipate a large crowd for most of our events at that, most of our games at that field. There will not be a public address system, and the restrooms will be available in Westfield High School. Some of the other questions we've received from the public talk about, well, why does this have to be a bond? I touched on this a little bit before. Our school operating budget has a 2% cap, and not just Westfield, but districts are finding, in order to do a major capital project, and even before the 2% cap, honestly, for a major capital project, that is why the state creates the concept of bonds and the regulations for bonds. Other people have said, why don't you go out for a bond for something else, for more teachers, or that was some of the suggestions we heard. Well, a bond can only be used to fund long-term major capital projects. It is created for something, a need such as this. Some other reasons to go out now for the bond referendum. There are current low interest rates, and that will serve us well for years to come. We also have the maturation of existing bonds, and there's also a favorable environment right now in construction, and we believe when we go out to bid that the cost will be lower because of that. So now, what is the cost of the bond? The amount of the bond is $16.9 million. And the average assessed home in Westfield, the annual tax bill, just because of this bond, the annual tax bill would increase $45 next year. When you look at the whole life of the bond, the average assessed home's annual tax bill over the life of the bond would never increase more than $55 if you include all of the existing debt, if you include all of that together. Now, these concepts are rather complex, and a few people have told us they want to see every single year. So you can see it. It's on the website. If you go to the website for the public schools and go to the button for the September 24th bond referendum, and then just look for cost of bond, and the entire schedule's out there. You can see how much does just this bond cost for every year of the 20 years, and you can see how much does the roof cost, and how much does the field cost, and you can see when this bond is added in with other bonds, exactly how much will the cost be. So no matter where your interest is, because we have found that people have different questions regarding that, all of that is available. It's all spelled out on the website. And speaking of the website, this is just, for those who may not be familiar with it, this is our website. We continue to update information. As questions are raised or as we find out more information, we do add that. One more? Okay. And I'd just like to close by saying that the volunteer board members who sit at this table, each and every one of them take their responsibility very seriously. They're out many nights throughout the year attending meetings, reviewing facility plans, asking endless questions, and utilizing each of their educational and professional experience to make the best decisions in their mind for the district. They have made the recommendation that a bond be brought to the voters to replace roofs and to provide a turf field at Westfield High School. And the decision is now in the hand of the voters. And I have two requests for the voters. Please take the time to become informed about the proposed bond. Please go to the website. Please look at the other information that we make available. We continue to post that information and to answer new questions as they're raised. And after you become informed, and after you've made your decision, please vote. We teach our students that the only way democracy works is if all citizens are active participants. So the choice is up to you, the voters of Westfield. Thank you.
Thank you. That was, I think, very helpful, particularly in terms of reminding us of the history and why we're proposing these projects. They've been on the facilities list for a long time. And it was also helpful, I think, to get more detail on all aspects of each of the projects. I think that as I've heard questions, some of the harder ones, I think we would benefit from hearing from our experts. And I know, Jane, you have a few as well. But I'll just ask a couple to start. And Bob Zoller is here. He's from Musco Lighting. One of the questions that I know many people asked had to do with the lighting, how we're lighting, and the spillage effect. And it's obviously a significant concern, particularly to people who live around the high school. So my question, Bob, for you is, can you give us just a couple of things, just an overview of, how you determined what the right lighting scheme was for this field, for Westfield? I get it that you do a lot of these projects, so I don't mean generally. I just mean what is it about this field and proposal that will make it work? And then more specifically, Peg mentioned some numbers. If you could tell us really the significance of those, if you can, in layman's terms, and what they mean to the people who live around the high school. That would be helpful.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
To start things off, whenever we begin lighting a field, there are two major things that have to be taken into account. The first being the safety of the players who are involved in the various athletic venues. And we have guidelines that are established that set what the amount of light is and the smoothness, or the quality of light that has to be on the playing field. And that is what we utilize to determine how much and how smooth or how focused the light has to be on the fields. The second has to do with what happens off the field. I've always looked at it that we're providing two things. We're supposed to provide light on the field, and we're supposed to provide darkness off the field. So those are the two things that come into play. And this project, like many sports lighting projects, we start off looking at a lighting design to light the fields, and it becomes very fluid. We go through revisions upon revisions till we find what is the best lighting design for this particular field. Just to give you an example, one of the things we decided to do was there are 2 overlaid softball fields on the field. We decided that we would keep one lit for games, and we would only have the second one lit as kind of a practice area and not lit for games, because we felt that in discussions with the board and discussions together as the professionals, that we wanted to take that aspect of the light spillage away from the adjoining properties. So we've gone through all of these different steps to get us to where we are now, where what we're doing is we're lighting the softball field to high school lighting levels. We're lighting the main turf field, the multi-purpose field, to high school lighting levels for games, particularly a higher light level for lacrosse, smaller ball, faster speed, and some of the, what would be some of the high school football games, or excuse me, there's no football on the field, the soccer games. And then what we also did was we implemented a lower lighting level so that we don't always have to have it lit up to that type of light level. We can bring it down to a lower requirement, whereas we would have recreational use or we would have practice usage. That way, we can minimize the amount of lights that we have on the field in terms of who's using it, what part of the school system is using it, and the purpose and the players that are involved at that time on the sport. Then what we do is, upon setting that up, we look at the properties that surround the field. How can we minimize that? And we design the heights of the poles, we design the location of the poles, and what we do is we look at what the light spillage is that goes around and goes beyond the field. With the technology that we have proposed on this project, it is the technology that's currently state-of-the-art. Just like becoming 21st century with the technology, this is the 21st century technology in sports lighting. And what the sports lighting has, it's a very shielded lighting fixture. And what we've done is to look at what that impact is. We've generated computer values going away from the field, out beyond the field in each direction, so we could see exactly how much light spillage we would anticipate when we look at the homes that surround the field. And what we found was in each of the different fields in their usage, the values varied between 0.0 and 0.2 foot candles. Now, as you heard and saw on the PowerPoint slide, basically 0.1 and under, we're in the area of pretty much moonlight. When you get down below those kind of numbers, and I'm out there with my light meter, I have a tough time actually reading my light meter to actually measure what the values are. And we always do this. When we prepare values for, such as a school board or a municipal project, we prepare those light level values and we say these are the values that have to be achieved. And those become the specification that have to be made and have to be met for the lighting system. So we have 0.0 to 0.2. That is getting toward where the homes are that are adjacent to the field. Now, one thing I want to add to the numbers that were given on the chart is that 0.5 foot candles is what's considered a safety factor. By that I mean if light is below 0.5 foot candles, that means there may not be enough light on the ground, that if there is an object on the ground, a person walking could possibly trip over that particular object. Now, those values that we achieved, we cannot take into account what the foliage coverage is that surrounds the field. Now, there are a lot of trees that do surround the field, but because we're generating these values through the computer programs, we can't take those trees into account. So the values we're presenting are values that do not take into account any of the foliage, any of the trees that surround the lighting field. Those trees only help to further diminish light as it spills or as it would go beyond the field. Now, as mentioned, there is one location, and that is the home that is just on the field side of Rawway Avenue, just beyond the fields, heading away from the high school. That's where we have one reading of 0.6, which only occurs when the multi-use field is in the high mode. Other than that, it's lower. And there, you do have some tree coverage, which will also help mitigate that value. That's just above that 0.5 value, which I talked about, which is the safety factor. And we mentioned about the streetlight values. I actually had gone out with my meter and measured what some of the streetlights in the area were giving off as amount of light, just so that there is some kind of a value to kind of point to and say, okay, this is this amount of light that you have around the field. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of what we've tried to do and the work that has gone on over the past several months, and actually probably longer than that, to achieve what would be the best integrated lighting system for the surrounding communities and to provide the safety and playability at the high school level players and athletes would require.
Thank you. Mark?
Can you clarify what you said about the safety factor? It sounded like you said that the safety factor was 0.5 and that anything below that, my word, is unsafe, yet you mentioned that the computer models that you did showed that the foot candles would be from 0.0 to 0.2.
That's correct. That's on the properties that are adjacent to the
but
field
that's
where
not
you
what's
don't
on
want
the-
it.
That's
Where
not
you don't
what's
want
on
the
the-
light.
on the lighting
No,
part
no,
of
no.
the field.
The lighting on the field, the softball field is lit to 50-foot candles on the infield, 30-foot candles in the outfield. The multipurpose field is 50-foot candles in the high mode and 30-foot candles in the low mode. Low mode being practice, 50 in the game.
Great, thank you.
So I should mention that Bob will be here for questions from board members and the public as we go through this. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was very helpful. Another area that I found particularly generated questions had to do with stormwater runoff and the consequences of putting a turf field where there's currently natural grass. And so the concerns were along the lines of, well, if it's turf, what's going to happen to the runoff? Is it faster? Will it flood? How will it drain? Where will it drain? And I've asked Beth Kinderdine from our engineering firm, if you could just please address that, from the homeowner's perspective first of, what does it mean to the surrounding properties? And then I think more comprehensively, what is it that's going to be under the field? What is the stormwater drainage system and solution that we're proposing? And then I think finally, where does it all get memorialized? Where's it written down?
Okay.
So if you could just do that.
Well, obviously, if we're taking natural turf and we're turning it into essentially an impervious surface, that means that the runoff from that surface is going to increase. Okay, so state law mandates that we not only decrease control the amount of runoff coming off the new impervious coverage, but decrease that runoff from the rate that is currently coming off the field. So we'll have to control not only the peak rate of runoff coming off the field, but also we'll have to account for any groundwater recharge that is currently happening on the field. What that means is that we'll be controlling not just the rate of runoff, so how quickly it comes off the field, but also the volume of runoff that's coming off that field. And how we do that is we put in a stormwater management system, which is essentially kind of like a big bathtub, okay? If you fill up the bathtub and there's a clog in the drain, it drains slower. So essentially what we're doing is providing an area under the field within the voids of stone under the field to store that runoff, and then we'll put in what's a control structure, which is essentially a concrete structure underground which controls the rate of runoff from the field using a series of devices, an orifice or a weir, something that we can calculate the rate of flow coming off of it. Okay, so we'll design that system so that it meets every state regulation, and then we will submit that to the agencies that have jurisdiction over us. So we will submit to the township because it's their public storm sewer that we're draining into. We will submit to the Soil Conservation District because they regulate any project that disturbs more than 5,000 square feet. So essentially, our plan for this is to use the stone under the artificial turf to store the runoff until we can control the rate coming off the field.
Thank you. Jane, do you want to go into some
Yeah,
of this?
I was wondering, I was thinking maybe we could talk a little bit about the turf itself. Thank you, and Beth is also here, going to be with us just in case people have additional questions. But we also, Perry DiPiazza is here from Field Turf, and we have really had a lot of questions regarding the turf itself as far as safety goes, not just player safety, but also actual safety of the turf itself that we've been addressing. I know there's been some misinformation from, turf 20 years ago, how much I have learned more about turf than I ever imagined, how much it has evolved, and I was wondering if maybe Perry could talk a little bit about that tonight.
Not the best example of our product, but smashed in my briefcase there. Yeah, thank you for introducing me. Yeah, so just to give you a little general background on synthetic turf applications and where they were and where they are today, and how there's a lot of misconceptions about the safety of the product itself. And let's start off by player safety and the user safety on the field. The old systems, typically known as AstroTurf of yesteryear, were carpet, were typical carpet that you would see in like commercial carpet. They were manufactured utilizing a nylon fiber, which is very abrasive, and you heard about burns and infections on the fields and those kind of things. And it was a very short pile of carpet like that, and that carpet was either glued down over some type of pad, over concrete or asphalt underneath the field. Very player unfriendly to be running on. A lot of MCL and ACL type of injuries, or injuries of the joints of the knees and ankles, would occur because the athlete would try to cut in that type of carpet and their foot would momentarily get caught in all of that fiber, or that nylon fiber in the field, and it was easy to tear your ACL or tear your knee, and they're typically career-ending type of injuries. So since field turf started out about 15 years ago, the new invention and the new generation of turf that they introduced was more like a shag type of carpet. So the new turf now is the total opposite of what the old nylon type of AstroTurf system was. I use the trade name AstroTurf. It's nylon short pile system. So these systems are typically have a lot of voids in them. If you look here, there's not a lot of plastic in the field. There's not a lot of plastic you get caught up in. Matter of fact, the rows of plastic are every 3/4 of an inch where they're stitched in, so it's like a shag carpet. What holds up the synthetic blade of grass is a combination of clean natural sand and then granulated tire rubber. The tires are very, very good, actually. They should not be thrown in landfills when they come off of our automobiles. There's probably about 30,000 tires that get saved from a landfill that are put to use in synthetic turf applications, playground applications. These products have been used utilizing tire rubber for 35 years or so. Nothing has ever been proven that it's detrimental for health reasons to the children that use it in daycare centers, all the way up to the applications of turf fields there. If you were to burn or introduce acid to tire rubber, the components in tire rubber could be harmful to human beings if they're inhaled or they're swallowed. That's certainly not the application in a turf field or in a playground. You're not putting acid on them, nor are you burning them and rolling around in the materials there. So the turf system here, holding it up, you're really actually, the players, the athletes are running and planting their cleats or sneakers in the sand and rubber, which is loose and similar to running on the beach. Not really in the high part of the beach where you create a lot of fatigue, but if you ran near the water line, actually you have a firm kind of surface, soft but resilient, but still firm enough and allow you to play fat. And the cleats actually move freely through the sand and rubber, and that creates the safety of the systems. There has been multiple long-term user studies that have been performed independently to prove that the synthetic turf, I can only speak for this brand of turf, that the system is actually safer than natural grass in almost every injury category, or at least as safe as natural grass, well-maintained natural grass in those categories. As far as and that's from the player perspective or the user perspective on the field, there are certainly many, many benefits to synthetic turf, and that's why this district here is in New Jersey alone, in our small little state, we actually have about 425 fields that are in the ground. I think there's over 250 high schools that have field turf on one or more of their playing fields right now. So it is something that's really, really popular and well needed in these heavily populated areas that we live in here, where the sports and the number of programs have increased, but the number of fields have still remained the same. The product itself, as far as safety goes, physically, or the components of the system itself, you may have heard some stories, and if you do some Google searching, don't believe anything that pops up on Google. You need to make sure that where the source is. There was something called lead chromate, where most carpet in the United States here and overseas was actually made with lead chromate. Lead chromate was put into the fibers of the carpet for color fastness, and that lead chromate was used for many years, actually, in these older type of turf systems now. The field turf system that the district would be considering using here, and most of the products that are out there today actually are lead-free. There is no lead chromate used. They changed that a long time ago. So field turf actually certifies to every owner in every field that's produced that the product is actually lead-free. And that's the carpet itself and the plastic fibers, which are made of polyethylene. And we talked about the tire component there being encapsulated in the particulate of the tire itself, the material itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jane, any more questions?
No, we haven't had, thank you, Perry, and Perry's also going to stay for additional questions. We haven't had a lot of questions necessarily regarding the roofs, but I did want to acknowledge that George Duthie is here, who is the architect who has been working with us for years through our exploration of solar and evaluating our roofs, which really led us to understanding that solar wasn't going to work until we really replaced our roofs. So I want to thank George for, all the efforts that he's put in and all the time, and also in case there are questions regarding the roofs, that he's here with us tonight as well.
Thank you. Members of the board, questions, comments? Dave?
Yeah, I had a question actually for Beth. If she wants to come to the
Yeah,
microphone,
please,
it might be
maybe
easier.
want to just come wait up front.
So can you just give us an indication, the devices that you spoke of underneath the field that kind of comprise the drainage system for the big bathtub?
Sure.
What's the life expectancy? What kind of, just a little bit more detail on what they do? And just, I know members of the public are going to have questions around, well, is that another potential cost area that the board maybe didn't consider? Can you just give us some indication of those life expectancies?
Sure. Directly under the carpet itself, you'll have some clean stone that acts as a bedding for the turf. And within that clean stone, you'll have an extensive network of underdrains. The underdrains are plastic perforated pipe. They will drain into usually some kind of a manifold pipe that collects all of the runoff that the perforated pipes collect. And then, like I said, we use the clean stone underneath that to the voids in the clean stone to store the runoff, and then it all travels downhill to a control structure. Everything under the carpet itself is installed once and will work for as long as it's in place. All of the products are essentially designed for a very extensive lifestyle. It's all plastic, clean stone, concrete. When you have to replace the carpet, that's all you have to replace. All of the infrastructure will be there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you can tell me if it's a question that maybe you can elaborate on, Jane, or one of the experts, but one of the things that I know I've heard a lot of questions about are the maintenance costs associated with the field. What are the costs, especially, I guess, maybe some comparison to what we pay now to maintain the natural field? So I don't know if it's better for you to speak to it or maybe one of them.
Perry? Maybe Perry?
We've learned how to hang out towards the front of the room.
Yep.
So the maintenance cost on the turf field is very inexpensive, actually. It's very minimal. There's two different pieces of equipment that are actually supplied with the field. The one piece is called a grumol. It's a 7-foot wide unit that actually aerates the sand and rubber to keep the field nice and soft, or as soft as the programs that are using it would like it to be. and it would be similar to if you packed sand down on the beach there, it would be firmer if you left it alone. If you aerated it a little bit or mixed it up, it would become softer. So that's what that device does. It should be used once every 8 weeks during the seasons of play. It takes about 1 hour to do a rectangular full-size field, north and south, east and west. It's a drag unit, a mechanical unit that gets pulled by one of the district's pieces of equipment, like a gator or a golf cart. And then there's a sweeper unit that picks up metal, debris, and Band-Aids and tape and those kind. That is actually the only required maintenance that has to be done on the field. So most school districts have enough staff that can do that, or their coaching staff chips in, or I'll give everybody a new job here, but the maintenance costs are minimal. The typical cost, and then you can look on detail on our website to find out, there are numerous studies that have been done at school locations where they have a rectangular full-size field, and if the school district or the municipality is actually maintaining the field well to keep it safe and keep it level and not have glass in it and those kind of things, and not have holes and divots so the kids are playing on a safe surface, the typical full-size field will cost somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000 a year to maintain, when you add in all of the cost of water and chemicals and cutting. Natural grass fields I'm talking about. $30,000 to $50,000 a year. So when you look at the life cycle of these fields, which should be somewhere between 10 and 12 years, depending on the amount of usage that the fields get and how well they're maintained, you'll see that that's a big block of money. If you add up the typical cost of the money that's going into maintenance on that particular natural grass field presently right now.
Yeah, I just had one more question for Perry, I'm sorry. The other question I thought maybe might be good to talk about is the temperature on the field. We've had some questions regarding heat.
Yeah, okay.
So if you could address that while you're there. So.
Yeah, thank you. This is a question that comes up all the time. It really is somewhat of an issue on playing fields in general, even natural grass fields down south, or where the climate is much different than it is here. I mean, a lot of fields in the south, they're in certain times of day when the temperature, it's very uncomfortable to be playing any type of activity on a natural grass field, no less a synthetic turf field. So most of the heat actually does not come from the tire particle. That's what everybody thinks. It's a black particulate in the field. It's not. It comes from the reflection on the plastic fibers, which are polyethylene. So the sun is reflecting off of these fibers, and that's what's creating the heat in the field there. So if you measure the temperature of the surface at the field itself, this is the turf's system here itself, you will get elevated readings right at the turf. But we introduced a few studies that were done, and one of the latest ones that were done was in the state of Connecticut there, where they performed 2 different very detailed testing that was done in the summertime on these fields. And when you moved up to the 2-foot height of there was only a 2% difference in temperature of the field, of a natural grass field to the synthetic turf field. And when you moved up to a 5-foot height, it was almost not measurable, that there were no difference. So the air temperature at 5 feet, where typically you're breathing and running, most kids or you anywhere, so there very minimal the difference between the temperature. But if you're on the surface itself, right on the surface itself, you will have elevated temperatures on the surface. So once again, we talked about extreme conditions during, would you be using the field anyway during those times. But in my 15 years of experience here, I've never heard of a field here where anybody had any issue in the state of New Jersey, in New York at least, with the usability of the field because the field was too hot to play on. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Anyone
have
else?
one more, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Can we have a more fuller explanation of how the light adjustment versus for play versus for games? It sounds like it's perfect in terms of addressing some of the concerns that the residents have brought up. Who's going to be doing that? Who's going to be out there? If there's a practice that then goes to a game, or a game that then goes to a practice, when are those adjustments going to be made, and how are they going to be made?
Sure.
I'm looking at her.
Yeah.
So we have a
Have it on her phone.
we have a supervisor of athletics, and she's responsible for the scheduling of practices and games, et cetera. And so that has to be monitored. And I'll tell you, on a given day, she knows exactly what just had to be changed because of the weather or something that happened in another district or whatever the story is. So I would imagine, actually you can help me with this, but I would imagine some of this can be pre-programmed and then can be adjusted as changes have to be made. Is that accurate?
Yes. The wireless system, which functions on CDMA technology, which is like your cell phone technology, is controlled by several different methods. Number one, the athletic director can go onto her computer and set up schedules for up to 10 years in advance. And it's and basically, oh, there you go. And basically, there'll be the various settings which we talked about. There will be softball field. There will be, and you can call them whatever you want. You can call the 3 different settings, but you'll have the 3 different settings automatically programmed in. So all that she has to do is plug that into her computer. Also, we have a control center, if you would, that's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if there was a situation that came up where suddenly there was a change, all that would have to be done is that the phone would have to be dialed an 800 number. They would get a live person at the end. Okay, we need to switch from the softball setting to the practice setting on the multi-use field, and it takes 60 seconds or less for that signal to go from, and that's in Iowa, from Iowa to your field, and that will change the settings immediately on the field as well. There is also an override on the field, which is a keyed override in the event that, God forbid, something happened and the wireless system came in, kind of what happened 11 years ago when the wireless communications all went down. You would have the capability to still be able to turn the lights on and off with a key at the field as a last resort, so you always control everything through the school district.
And that system in some way is similar to what we do for our heating in our buildings. We have had that as part of our energy conservation program. We have had those controlled by computer. We've learned a lot, I think, in that process. While I was teasing, I mean, Sandy would be a main person responsible for that, but you would never have one person. You always have a backup so that whatever happens, and it has worked successfully with the operations of our heating and our heating systems in the district. So it would be somewhat similar, and we would certainly have backup also for that.
So I just had a follow-up for Bob. Is there a mobile application that you could be on an iPhone or a Droid and remote control the field lights that way?
I believe so, yes. I think there is an app available for that. If not, it's very close to being available. And everything is driven by a username and a passcode. So you have to have the username and the passcode. We have had the system operational since 1999. We have not been hacked yet.
That's a challenge.
Any other questions from board members? All right, seeing none, I will open it up to the public. If you have a question, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and ask your question.